Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahe, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Today we will finish chapter 8. Chapter 9 then will continue and support chapter 7. Chapter 7 is revealing the nature of reality, the higher nature and the lower nature. So this means if we skipped chapter 7 and we haven't understood para and apara prakriti, what's the difference between matter and consciousness, then chapter 9 is going to provide an even deeper clarity to distinction between satya and mithya. So that's what's coming. So the revision for since last week, just to catch us up. Krishna has broadly classified all possible goals in life. So think about any goal right now, any goal whatsoever, in any area, with anyone, at any time, at any age. Okay? Now, everything that we can think of only comes under two categories. And Krishna said it comes under infinite. This is called goal 1. So when I say goal 1, just think of infinite. And it comes under, what's the other opposite? What's opposite to infinite? Yeah, so obviously one other choice is finite goal. So goal 1 is infinite and goal 2 is finite. So this means any amount of dharma, of kama and artha put together in different variations, in different combinations for infinite amount of years, all of them fall under goal number 2, finite. And the other names for goal 1 and goal 2, just so we can have some common language, goal 1, which we called infinite, is also Bhagavan, or Ishvara, or Atma, or spiritual goal. And goal 2, which is finite, we can say Anatma, that means not self, which means materialistic goals. So for example, just to demonstrate how the former 3, dharma, artha, and kama, are finite. Any amount of dharma, virtue, or morals that we accumulate in our life at any time, does that ever produce infinite virtue in us? Does that ever produce infinite morality in us? No. So in other words, what is dharma? Virtue, morality. What is right? So no matter what action we impose to acquire dharma, we are never infinitely virtuous. Why? The answer is because the action which we put into the field was itself finite. So in other words, by our finite actions, we can never expect an infinite result. Therefore, no amount of actions to be smart, to be virtuous, to know things in this world is ever going to create us to be an all-knowing Ishvara or Bhagavan. Why? Because the actions which we put were finite in themselves, therefore we get a correlative finite result. In the same way, did you ever notice that no amount of action that we put into the field to make money is ever going to bring us an infinite amount of money? Have you noticed that? Why? Because artha, that means wealth or general resources, in order to accumulate or to acquire artha, wealth, in any kind of shape or form or resources, even gold or even house or even luxury, will never provide infinite money. Why? Because the action that we put into the field itself was limited, therefore we get only corresponding limited artha or limited kama, desire or luxury. So what does this tell us right now? There is no point trying to think of what action could I put into the field that is going to magically provide me infinity. So we're now established why people are always wanting to accumulate one more time. I want to read one more book. I want to have one more stock trade. I want to sell to one more customer. Why? Just the fact that I want to do it one more time implies what? That the last time provided finite results, therefore I need to do it again. Because obviously the last one didn't do the job, it didn't provide me infinity, so maybe this one will, but this one is also going to become that one by the time you do it. Okay, so this is just to clarify, any action you put into the field equals finite, therefore what do we get back? Goal to finite results. Now the scriptures also, when I say scriptures, I'm talking about Brahma Sutra, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita specifically, initially present Ishvara or God or Bhagavan, they're all synonymous words, as a person who resides in a loka, at some place out there. Why do you think they do this? Why do they initially present God as some person who resides at some place?
Well, because we need to see something finite, feel something that's finite there.
Good. And why is that?
Because our mind is tuned that way.
Gross. In other words, our mind is physically trained. It's gross, therefore we can only relate to gross matter. Therefore we need to perceive Ishvara as something gross at some place. Because imagine telling a common man, you know, Ishvara is formless. There's nothing you can attribute onto God. What are they going to think? Like, how do I grasp this? How do I grasp nothing? So in other words, initially we always present God as someone or something with attributes. And when I say loka, I mean what? Heaven. That means heavens between earth and Brahmaloka. That means Swargaloka. And this idea has to be removed that God is some person at some place. When the mind is purified. This means we don't do it before the mind is purified, we do it after the mind is purified. Because what happens if we keep holding this image that Ishvara is some entity at some place at some time? What happens? So then we're putting Ishvara as another finite goal, which is goal 2. So in other words, no amount of Ishvara that we're going to get is ever going to give us infinity, because this is also falling under goal 2. So in other words, we need to move away from this idea that is out there, because anytime you put anything under time, space, and matter, you're binding it to time, space, and matter. And we cannot do that to Ishvara. Because then you have to ask, then who created time, space, and matter? If Ishvara is created by time and sustained by time, space, and matter, then who created time, space, and matter to sustain Ishvara? Okay, so this idea has to go. Also, Ishvara cannot be called energy. This is what we sometimes say. Yeah, God is energy. Why? Because any energy transforms. It has a conversion process. You got electromagnetic energy, you've got gravitational energy, you've got energy of velocity. All sorts of energies are always subject to variances, are always subject to quantity and quality. And also, to say transform, so suppose we'll watch this flower, a time lapse, for 30 days. This flower is going to transform. It's going to take some time, isn't it? So what do we say about energy? Energy transforms. Anything that transforms, again, falls under time. So therefore, Ishvara cannot be energy, because energy requires time to transform. Also, the moment you say God is energy, you see what just happened? So there was nothing, and suddenly I said it, and it lasted for a while. The thought lasted for a while, and I stopped saying it, and that thought is gone. But what still remains? You. So in other words, just saying that God is anything itself is also time-bound, because the sentence started and then the sentence ended. So anytime someone wants to discuss what God is, that is only valid while they're actually discussing what God is. But the moment they stop talking, where's that thought then? It's gone. But what remains? Awareness, you. So therefore, Ishvara cannot be any thought about or any way you look at it, because when you stop saying it, that thought is gone, new thought comes. Okay, then what is Ishvara? What is God? The answer is formless, changeless, consciousness principle. It doesn't have any form. You cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot perceive it. And it's changeless, it never changes. In other words, in Sanskrit, Chaitanya Tattvam. Chaitanya consciousness, Tattvam reality. The reality which is consciousness itself. And this Chaitanya Tattvam is beyond time and space. Therefore, we cannot put it under time and space, nor manifest or unmanifest. In other words, we will talk about what is Nirguna Ishvara, Ishvara without any features. So let's begin with 20 together. Parastasmatu bhavodnyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yaksa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashyati. Verse 15 to 19, Krishna spoke about the finite results. Goal 2. Anything that is finite, anything that is matter. And this finite result, as we discussed, dharma, artha, kama, produces rebirth. Finite means that matter has two conditions, manifest and unmanifest. And both are bound by time. For example, you have an acorn seed. The oak tree is unmanifest when it's in the acorn seed state. So the acorn tree goes from the unmanifest to what? To manifest. Does that take time? Okay, so in other words, unmanifest doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it just means it's in potential. Just like the whole potential of the oak tree is inside the acorn seed. And therefore, when a certain law of Ishvara comes, called growth, then photosynthesis, then what happens? This unmanifest converts into manifest. In other words, it takes time. That's why we say manifest and unmanifest is bound by time. Now you know why it's called finite, because it takes time. Anything within time and space is finite. So this finite manifest and unmanifest, another name for it is Maya. So what is Maya? That which manifests and unmanifests eternally. What is the world? Is the world manifest right now? What I say about Maya? Maya is that which manifests and unmanifests eternally. In other words, the Maya becomes the world, because we said Maya is the manifest and unmanifest, and the world, having it being manifest, also becomes Maya. Okay, why? Because both Maya and the world are matter subject to time and space. For Maya to create takes time. For something to unmanifest takes time. So therefore both world and Maya are limited by time itself. So this manifest and unmanifest, these two states, we will call this unmanifest number 2. Why do we call it an unmanifest number 2? Because in verse 18, Krishna spoke about unmanifest and manifest of matter. But now he's going to introduce unmanifest consciousness. So therefore we have to distinguish them, which one's which. That's why I say unmanifest number 2 is matter and unmanifest number 1 is consciousness. Okay. So this unmanifest number 1 is infinite Brahman. That means not bound by time and space. In other words, unmanifest number 1 is beyond unmanifest number 2. What is unmanifest number 1? Answer: consciousness witnessing the manifest and the unmanifest. So what is consciousness? That which witnesses matter constantly going into existence and then coming back into nothingness. For example, logic. To say manifest and unmanifest, what does that imply? Because notice how we're using two words, manifest and unmanifest. That implies what? A third principle, a third I, because of which it's able to validate both. Imagine that you are a I and you find yourself as an I in a room, a white room. There's nothing in the room. And you can't even see the walls. It's just nothing in the room. All we can see in the room, or you can see in the room, is another I. We'll call this A and we'll call this B. From your perspective, how many things are in existence? One, okay. From their existence, how many things are in existence? One. So, in other words, because the third principle is lacking, we'll call it the third I, there is either only one or two. So without a third principle to see both, there would be only either manifest or unmanifest. Why do we know about both? It's because the third principle, the third I, is that which represents consciousness, because of which it's unchanging and thus it's able to witness whether the I is present, whether number one is present, or whether this one is present or not. So you can erase this one will still know. You can erase this one will still know. Which means this one is unchanging. That's why we say manifest and unmanifest. So for example, we use the three states of our experience to justify this statement that consciousness is free of, independent of, manifest and unmanifest. That's what we just established. So in the waking or dream state, what do we say? I am now witnessing the manifest world of time, space, and objects. You are witnessing the world of time, space, and objects. And in deep sleep, this same world, which is manifest and consists of time, space, and objects, goes into unmanifest. And thus there is then total blankness, total darkness. There is nothing to say about your deep sleep. However, despite this unmanifest, that is deep sleep, having nothing, who's still available? I am. I still pervade deep sleep. Now you're going to say, how do you know that? How can you prove that I'm in my deep sleep? The answer is... Huh?
I wake up and I know it.
Yeah. In other words,
we are not aware of the world.
Yeah, exactly. So see how Madhu knows? She knows that we're not aware of the world in deep sleep. So in other words, she knows that. In other words, how do I know that I pervade deep sleep? Because when I wake up, I'm able to talk about the fact that there was nothing. In other words, I was still there despite the entire world of time, space, and object being completely absent. The fact that I can say there was nothing means what? Consciousness was still available, witnessing the unmanifest. Thus we say, the third I, the third principle, is that because of which it validates both the manifest and unmanifest. And this principle is you, consciousness. Not only can you report the three states of the waking, dream, and deep sleep, that same I which can report those three states can also report what? The contents within each state. So not only are these three states changing, but inside the waking, there's your life, like today. Today is the waking state. And I did this, I went there, I listened to the Gita, I went home, I ate, I woke up and so on, I had a conversation. So many contents are changing. Not only do we know about that state, but also the contents in each state for both the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So this is what we mean. Consciousness, thus, is completely unchanging, never modifying, and because of its condition of sameness, we're able to constantly talk about these changes ongoingly. if you were to convert this statement into a personal statement, I am the witness of manifest and unmanifest matter. What do we call consciousness? Unmanifest number one. Consciousness is the witness of manifest and unmanifest matter. When I say conscious, I'm talking about Brahman. So the fact that you can validate both the manifest and unmanifest means what? You are Brahman. You are that consciousness. So we're not talking about somewhere out there. The fact is, our experience proves it. And this is also why scientists are struggling to put consciousness as a law bound by time and space. Because you cannot locate consciousness. You're not going to find it somewhere out there. And you're not going to certainly measure it. Because to see something or to measure something requires time. I need it for it to last, whether it's half a second or microseconds, but you cannot measure because it's out of time. Therefore, there is no instrument in existence that can measure the presence of consciousness, because it is not in the realm of where those instruments are found, which is in time and space. So this means the only way to detect consciousness is how? Through the scriptures, through the Upanishads. That's the importance of the Upanishads. Science is not going to answer this. Otherwise, if they did, you wouldn't need the Upanishads. Okay, now, also, what is this witness, consciousness? That means unmanifest number one. Other names for it are Chapter 7, Para Prakriti. Chapter 8, Aksharam Brahma. That means imperishable Brahman. Formless Ishvara. Or Satyam. Okay, now what about Ishvara with attributes? It is given initially because the gross mind cannot perceive, it cannot appreciate the formless consciousness beyond time and space. For that reason, validity of form like Rama, like Ganapati, like Ganesha, or Krishna or Vishnu or Jesus, there is validity in that, because the mind cannot simply, go, what are they pointing to? What is this timeless, what is this beyond that they're pointing to? Therefore, we need something that is physical, something that is tangible. So this should remove this idea of why do we have so many people worshiping physical entities representing God? The answer is because the mind that is doing so is still gross. Therefore, it needs something physical to address, to relate. Okay, now what is the nature of unmanifest number one, consciousness? The answer is sanatanaha, beyond time and space, never affected by time. That means consciousness is never going to run out or expire one day. Remember, so you are consciousness. What does this mean? You're eternal. We are eternal. Our nature is eternal. Sanatanaha is the consciousness which witnesses the arrival of time and disappearance of time. Witness arrival of time. Every day we wake up, time starts. Oh, I've got to brush my teeth, I need to go to work, instantly. And then when we go to sleep, there's no time. And thus we say there's nothing, because everything's unmanifest. So this is what we call immortal. I can now question, where is this God or consciousness or unmanifest number one? Where can we find him? If I can find God, implies that Ishvara is bound by time and space. Now, next question is a little bit more tricky. How does this consciousness or Bhagavan or unmanifest number one function? How does God work?
God doesn't function, it's just there.
Okay, why? Okay, what does function mean? Function. Okay, how about
finite qualities.
Is this functioning, this projector? What's causing it to function? Okay, in other words, what's this? What's the result of this working? Effect. And thus this is a cause. In other words, functioning is also bound by time and space. Anything that functions is a result of cause and effect. Okay, so we cannot ask why, We can't ask how and we can't ask where, because that puts it into the time-space boundaries. But distinct from that unmanifest is another unmanifest. That means distinct from that unmanifest number 2, matter, there is another unmanifest consciousness, which is existent and eternal, that is not destroyed when all beings are destroyed. Avyakto kshara ityuktaha tam ahuh paramam gatim yam prapya nanivartante tadhama paramam mama. Okay, here Krishna is going to speak more about unmanifest number 1, consciousness. And also this is called akshara, imperishable, and it doesn't mean it is imperishable in time. It means it doesn't perish whether time exists or not. It is the substratum of time. This is the logic. If something's timeless, then can it be colorful?
No.
Can it be tasteful?
No.
Why not?
If it doesn't have any attributes.
Okay? Consciousness is timeless. So suppose this lovely jasmine. So I go like this. That took 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. In other words, to smell something, I need what? Time. To see something, I need time. To hear something, I need time. To feel, to touch something, I need time. To taste something, I need time. So therefore, what does timeless mean? That which is soundless, tasteless, formless, smellless. And what are we talking about? Consciousness. So therefore, we can never smell consciousness. We can never hear God. God spoke to me tonight. Why? Why can't you hear God? Because to say, I heard God, how long is that going to last? Well, however long it lasts, right? 10 seconds. So where's God when He goes away? In other words, I can't smell, I can't taste, I can't touch, I can't feel, I can't perceive. Why? Because it is all bound to time and space. So next time someone says, I'm a God man, and I constantly receive messages from God, what does this mean? Misconceptions, misnotions. We cannot say anything about that which doesn't have any attributes, nirgunam. I'm just telling you this so you don't get tricked by, these people who are claiming to be something. Okay. I know them, and they're often self-proclaimed. Used to be in the 1970s, the God man, especially in India, it happens. It doesn't happen anymore, I think. Not as much as it. Not as much as it.
It's still happening.
It's still happening,
In
yeah.
every religion and everywhere.
Yeah. Not as much. I don't think as much as
Well,
that.
look at America. What would you call the scientists?
Scientology.
Full on.
Yeah, really.
Full on. He claims. God
just
told
thought-
me this. God told me that. Pass it on to you. Oh my
goodness. I don't know. This is still happening.
That was very strong in America.
Wouldn't psychic come in this category? Psychic?
Psychic is when they.
Well, when they predict your future, I think that's different.
That's possible, but it's inaccurate because the moment I read your future, then if your path goes south, then your whole future is negated. So it depends on if you continue your trajectory, then I'll be right. But if you change your trajectory, then I'll be wrong. That's why the tarot card readers and psychics and even astrology can be inaccurate half the time because people are always changing their interests. Now Krishna says, Tam ahuhuh paramam gatim. Accomplishing Brahman is the highest goal. Only then one will go beyond time and space limitation. This means the fact that we're alive now, we are limited by time. Time, we're one day closer to the grave. This is that's what it means to say limited. So what does it say? Only when one realizes the highest goal, being I am limitless Brahman, only then one gets out of this samsara, which is nothing but cause and effect, or time itself. Okay. Reaching which one does not return. Now, how do you reach Brahman? Why don't you travel to reach Ishvara? Stick with the context of today. Time and space. You need to use the same vocabulary. Okay. So the moment we say I'm going somewhere, instantly it is not to limitlessness, because limitlessness, infinity, is out of time and space. Okay, then how do we then reach Brahman? The only way in existence for all times, in all four yugas, is through self-knowledge, wisdom. Now, what does this mean? Brahman has never been away from me and never will be away from me. Brahman is the consciousness principle, which just happens to be I. What is Brahman? Consciousness principle. Who is not conscious here? Not a single person. Therefore, we are that already. Thus, one, quote, reaches, we'll put that in quotes so you don't think about time and space, by claiming your identity as Brahman.
You could say time and space in order for the mind to get the self-knowledge, because it's the mind that needs...
Yeah, so time and space is only a tool to arrive to the fact that I'm beyond time and space. Yeah, so it's how beautifully they work together.
Because that statement, Brahman can never be away from me. Well, what's the definition of me?
Yeah, because what's not away from me is me. So in other words, it's just implying that I am Brahman if it's never away from me. So Brahman has never been away from me. It never will be away from me. I thought he was away from me, if you want to call it he, but he's not away from me. My false notions told me he was away from me, thus I was searching elsewhere. Question, think about it. Will one reach Brahman through Jnanam?
Yes.
No, reach means you will experience, you will discover.
No, you know what, that's why I put reach in quotes. You already know that I don't mean as in, will one arrive to Brahman through self-knowledge?
Yes.
What if I say no? What would you have to respond to that? What does knowledge do?
Removes ignorance.
Excellent, Adrian. In other words, I cannot learn who I am because I am already the truth. I'm already Brahman. So the only aspect that I can do is receive knowledge which destroys false notions, which deny me from knowing myself as infinite Brahman.
But knowledge also creates arrogance.
Yeah, but that's like, chapter 3. We don't worry about that now. We're in chapter 8 already. So if we were, in chapter beginning of the Gita, then sure, we will first say, be careful, because then a person will fall arrogant. But we already addressed this for 7 chapters, so we have to move on with the program. Yeah. So when we say self-knowledge, we're not talking about I am learning who I am. I'm simply learning who I am not. Thus, I am removing false notions which deny me from appreciation of myself as the infinite Brahman. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, question. How does one drop a false notion? Because we just established. Knowing myself as Brahman is not learning, it's dropping notions. So how do you drop notions? This question is going to be either homework, write down 15 ways how to drop notions about anything. It can even be about the world, your personal belief systems, your values. Because remember, personal belief systems, your values, what? Deny the knowledge of myself as limitless. How do I actually remove a false notion that I'm limited? How do I remove a false notion that I'm not worth it? How do I remove a false notion that I don't deserve to be happy? How do I remove the false notion that I am not good? How do I remove the false notion of so on? I want you to find 15 creative ways how to remove false notions, because this is the essence of self-knowledge. Then finally, the word Dhamma, which means abode. This is the danger of reading the Gita sometimes by ourselves. The moment we think of abode, what do we think of?
Place.
Place, exactly. Time and space. So we have to get the context. The context in this abode means consciousness principle. In other words, para prakriti per chapter 7. In other words, start with apara prakriti, that is meditating on this limitless, formless Ishvara with attributes. Why? Because the mind can only relate at the beginning to form. So therefore we start meditating on the formless with attributes, and then what happens? the mind becomes purified, clear, and that paves way for meditating on Nirguna Ishvara. In other words, switching from Apara Prakriti to Para Prakriti. And what is Para Prakriti practice? Inquiry related to awareness, yourself. What is awareness? How am I awareness? Okay? If you don't do this, what's going to happen? We will never enter Dhamma. We will never enter this abode if we don't go from Apara Prakriti to Para Prakriti. So this is what we're saying. We need to keep moving forward. We can't get stuck in one and then just say, this is it. The manifest being is said to be the imperishable one. That's Brahman. Scriptures declare that being to be the supreme goal. That is the supreme abode of mind, attaining which they do not return back to time and space. That was verse 21. Purushak saparach partha bhaktya labhyastvananyaya yasyantah sthani bhutani yena sarvam idam tatam. The consciousness principle, which we've been speaking of, or unmanifest number one. When I say unmanifest number one, for those who came late, I'm talking about consciousness. Or para prakriti, or Brahman, or absolute truth. This is called, in this verse, paraha purushaha. Top line, first words. Paraha purushaha means the supreme or the highest Lord, the highest goal, the highest reality, the ultimate reality. And what does the word purushaha mean? We discussed twice. Purushaha has two definitions: indweller of all and the one who fills up creation. So what is the Lord? What's Ishvara? The one who dwells in everything and fills up this creation, including your pen that you're using to write this down, including the air that we're breathing. So we're breathing what? Ishvara. Yeah. Now, yasya antaha sthani bhutani. In Brahman rests all beings, rests all creation. In other words, creation rests in Brahman, and Brahman does not rest in creation. Therefore, Brahman is what? The highest reality, upon which everything depends on. And then, yena sarvam idam tatam. This whole creation, when I say creation, I'm talking about what? Time, and space, matter, or manifest and unmanifest, is pervaded by consciousness, in other words, by paraha purushaha in this verse. Now, we're going to apply logic to this, because it sounds very vague just to say the whole creation is pervaded by consciousness. Let's prove that. If you talk about the existence of anything, this exists. It means what? You're conscious. You have to be conscious to know that something exists. Or to say existence of a tree, right? We look at a beautiful tree, it exists, it's there. It means what? I am aware of what? The tree. So in other words, the tree depends on my awareness of it for it to be recognized as existing. So what does this mean? Existence of presupposes knowledge of. Knowledge of presupposes consciousness of. So, for example, existence of a tree. What is a tree? Not only does it exist, but it has a certain nama rupa, name and form. And that is knowledge. A tree is not an elephant. In other words, a tree itself is part of sarvam dhyanam, all knowledge. What is Ishvara? Sarvam dhyanam. So the existence of a tree is entwined with the knowledge of a tree. That's why I didn't say elephant, I said tree. I said tree, because it's specific knowledge pertaining to the tree. But to say that the tree exists as a tree needs what? Awareness of that, awareness of the tree. So existence presupposes knowledge, and the existence of knowledge presupposes awareness or consciousness. Try being aware or conscious of anything when the body is in a coma. That's what we mean. We first need consciousness to validate the existence of the world. And what's the existence of the world? Nothing but knowledge of the world. And what is Ishvara? All knowledge. So what are we validating constantly? What is Brahman validating? Ishvara. Okay. Now, how can we permanently identify with Paraha Purushaha? How do we permanently identify with consciousness? Because it's actually quite easy to go, I know who I am. I'm the self. What's much harder is remaining in that knowledge unceasingly, whether even if the person's in dream, they still know who they are as much as they know in the waking state. Even if they're, in the amidst the most cooking, and they have to take care of the children, and there's, wife is, going like this, okay, they still know who they are as much as when they are meditating by themselves in peace. So therefore, how does one establish oneself permanently as consciousness in consciousness? The answer is Bhaktya Lapyaha Ananyaya. Answer: by your undivided bhakti, undivided devotion, by the means of nishkama bhakti. So, several factors. Undivided devotion. That means permanent, constant, unceasing devotion. How? Through nishkama bhakti. What is nishkama bhakti now? Okay, what is bhakti? Devotion. What is nishkama? No, that's nirguna. What is nishkama? Meditating only on God. That means at the exclusion of all the other goals of dharma, artha, and kama. Therefore, undivided devotion on God constantly is how one establishes oneself permanently in consciousness as consciousness, so that it's clear 24/7. This is called moksha, by the way. Because moksha does not mean, I know who I am, but I actually forget when I'm on the road. Who is the nishkama bhakta, or another name for it is mumukshu. What is mumukshu? Desirous of liberation. So who are they? The one who has understood the tyranny of time, that means the limits of time, and who has voted for Paraha Purushaha, for the supreme truth. So in pure English, think about God, devote to God, both with attributes and later on without attributes. That's how. Okay, how to attain Purushaha, this Paraha, the supreme reality, how to attain it? Answer is continue your Saguna Bhakti. That means continue devotion on Ishvara with attributes. And then what happens? The mind gets qualified, that means it gets purified, and then one is able to contemplate on Nirguna Bhakti. What is Nirguna Bhakti? In other words, I am inquiring on the fact that all that is here is one without a second. That's a statement of Advaita. Now, how do you inquire that all that is here is one without a second? Someone give me a tangible, graspable way to do this.
Just one.
Knowing that everything by knowing that everything that exists is within your consciousness.
Good, very good. How else? How do I meditate on everything here is one?
Well, because everything rises from Brahman. He's the substratum for the whole universe.
Ask yourself.
What do we see all around us, everywhere, all the time? Matter. What is matter? 5 elements. What is 5 elements? 3 gunas. What is 3 gunas? Constitutes Maya. What is Maya? Manifest and unmanifest matter. And what does that resolve into? Consciousness. We proved this when I started the class. We said the world comes, right? Manifest comes. I get to aware it. I get to be conscious of it. And then deep sleep, it all goes away. But I'm still present. Okay, so in other words, it's called deduction, or reduction or deduction. You use reduction. All that I see subatomic particles, atoms, quarks, and I can keep going smaller, and ultimately I arrive to what? Space. It's funny because scientists are looking for the smallest particle, but what's the smallest? Space, right? Because the space is what allows them to look. So in other words, when we get to space, that's 5 elements. It resolves into 3 gunas. 3 gunas, nothing but Maya. Maya is nothing but, or resting in, or supported by the substratum of Brahman, consciousness. Therefore, that is how everything here is one. You're using logic. So just to say everything is one, that's good. But step 2 is to actually say, how is that true? Okay, this helps us to actually apply both the left and the right brain to this inquiry. Now Krishna has concluded, Paraha, Purushaha, is the highest goal in life for everyone, or at least those who want to accept that. And the world is, in comparison, not the highest goal. It is just there to support the highest goal. That's all. Now, next topic in verse 23 is going to change entirely. We're going to talk about 2 heavenly paths which the Jivatma takes after death. So this means the moment we die physically, suppose we die right now, what happens after death? We talked about how to die already, but now what's going to happen right after death? Where does this Jivatma go? When the person dies, they're not going to go to Ishwara's lap and have a deep conversation about the meaning of life. Why? Why can you not go and come to oneness temporarily after death? Like go to speak to God. Karma. Okay, yeah, that's another reason. Okay, to speak with, yeah, that's excellent because that's going to take us to the next immediately. Which you're actually already ahead of me.
Well, you don't have a conversation with God.
Yeah.
How can you have a conversation with God?
You know, there's a book called Conversations with God. Remember that? Yeah, it's like a bestseller. You know, from 1996 it came out. This is what we mean. You cannot have a conversation with God. Why? Because it's putting God into time and space. So anytime someone comes back from the dead, from a near-death experience and talks about, I spoke with God, you know, and it was all beautiful, what are they actually talking about? Not God, but what are they talking about? Devatas. We're going to talk about Devatas right now. Okay, so we need to be very careful when you cannot perceive, because I said it's timeless, therefore we cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot hear it. Also, one more point before verse 23 is the moment we die, immediately, considering the person has not ascertained this knowledge, they're not a Jivan Mukta, they're still ordinary samsari, immediately the Jivatma, what is Jivatma? That one who inherits a new body, that immediately they will go to a new samsara loka. Immediately. There will be some conversation with devatas, which we'll speak about, but immediately go to a new loka. There is no break. And if there is a break, then it's certainly a break waiting for a new body to get born to suit the karma palam of the individual who died. Okay?
Bodies that you're born into in those other lokas?
Yeah, they're all bodies because there's, the Karana, Sukshma, and Sthula Sharira, the 3 bodies apply to every single loka. They're just subtler, finer. Okay, we'll read verse 22. O Arjuna, indeed, that supreme lore can be attained by undivided devotion. All beings are in him, and all this is pervaded by him. Yatra kale tvana vrittim, avrittim chaiva yoginaha, prayata yanti tam kalam, vakshyami bharatarshabha. So Krishna is going to talk about the 2 paths or in this case, it will be used the word marga. Marga means path in Sanskrit, which will lead to two different destinations for a jivatma, a person who has died physically. So you should be asking, what are these two paths and what are these two destinations that a person who has died will go to? Now the word yoginaha, yogi, top line, it's going to refer to the seekers of goal number one. What's goal number one? Infinite. That means they're looking for krama mukti. What are these seekers of the infinite reach who have not become liberated while living? So anavartim, infinite goal from which there is no return. Return to what? Return to time and space. That means it's a one-way ticket to Brahmaloka. That's what goal number one is. And in Brahmaloka, what happens? Krama mukti, and they gain the knowledge, self-knowledge, leading to moksha. You shouldn't be surprised because we already established the framework for this earlier on. The second one is avartim, returnable goal. Such types will go to heaven, swarga, and they will experience swargaloka, and they will experience very fine pleasures for the jivatma. And then after they have exhausted their palam, what's going to happen? Like a rocket that has exhausted its fuel, is going to come back into the ocean of samsara. Hello again on earth. Okay, now vakshyami. So in other words, Arjuna, I shall now speak about these two paths. The first path is called Shukla Marga. In other words, the bright path or the bright way. And the second is called Krishna Marga. I'm not talking about Krishna, the one who's having a conversation with Arjuna. Krishna means dark. So the second is dark path. Now, Shukla Marga, which means bright path. What does this mean? In summary, the person dies, the jivatma travels to Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka, they gain the self-knowledge. Self-knowledge leads to moksha. Now, Krishna Marga. What happens there? The person, having done sufficient punya karma while living, dies, then goes to Swargaloka, experiences pleasure, a lot of good stuff happens there, and then they come back to earth. And also, Krishna Marga is also called Pitr Loka, P-I-T-R Loka. You've probably heard this word. Yeah. Now, Pitr Loka means the world of departed ancestors, which is really interesting because if you listen to most of the near-death experiences, they will when they come back, they will always speak about, I saw my, ancestors. So what does this mean? Their ancestors have done sufficient punyam while living, and now they are where? In Swargaloka, that means between earth and Brahmaloka, and they're there to guide them to find their way, which we'll now discuss how do you actually get guided. In other words, the ancestors are in heaven, and they're just saying, hello, welcome. You want to join us? No, I want to go to Brahmaloka. Okay. Now next, Krishna is now going to describe what is specifically the bright path. O Arjuna, I shall speak about those paths departing by which path the yogis attain the world of non-return, Brahmaloka, and the world of return, heaven. Now verse 24. Together. Agnir Jyotir Ahah Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha. Okay, now what is the nature of these two paths of Shukla and Krishna Marga? That's the first question. After death, the subtle body departs, and this subtle body and causal body we call jivatma. Now what happens is because the death has happened in time and space, there is a traveling involved. There is a going somewhere involved. So it's a different world immediately that happens. If you need proof of this, start reading some near-death experiences. It is always the same story. The person has died. Immediately what happens next? They saw the light and then they went to the light, and then they traveled there, they went there, they spoke to this person, they came back, and then they finally come back to earth and say, here's what happened. And no one believes them, but the fact is we have thousands of stories that all conclude that there is a traveling process after death. And because this Jivatma doesn't know where to go, doesn't know what's in front and what's behind, they don't have a map. So for this reason, they need help. So therefore, what happens is there are certain guides, they're called Devatas, and they're there to assist the Jivatma, in other words, to welcome them and to guide them onto the next place, so that from that place, the new Devata can escort them to Brahma Loka. Because someone who wants to go to Brahma Loka, right, they need to find, how do I get there? So what happens is these Devatas come and they say, well, I'm going to take you to a certain distance and I'm going to leave you there, and then some other Devata is going to come and going to take you to Brahma Loka. It's the same thing with security. For example, you want to go to see the president. The security guard takes you to a certain spot, and then the security guard cannot go any further. They drop you to what? To someone that's in a higher position. And that person then takes you to what? To the president. So in the same case, this is what happens.
So a prerequisite is the desire to be there on behalf of the Jivatma.
Yeah, that prerequisite happened while living on earth as a result of extreme upasana. Yeah. Now, which 5 Devatas will specifically guide the Jivatma to Brahmaloka? In other words, on the Shukla Marga. This is the bright path. First one is Agnihi on the board, fire. Second is Jyotihi. This is a common name in India, Jyoti. Jyotihi means brightness or light. That means the Agnihi Devata, Jyotihi Devata, Ahaha Devata, that means the Devata of the day. Shuklaha Devata means the bright lunar fortnight. If you don't know what this is a lunar phase in a month according to the Hindu calendar. You can Google this and you'll find out. And the 5th Devata is Uttarayanam, when the northern phase of the sun. This is between 15th of January and 15th of July. Okay. Now you're going to say, what is Devata, right? Because I kept saying Agnihi Devata, Jyotihi Devata, Shuklaha Devata, and so on. What does Devata mean? Lord governing protection of my immune system. We call that Lord white blood cell Devata. So white blood cells in your system, they are intelligent. They have a certain function assigned to what? Protect you from being sick, keeping the immune system strong. So they are intelligence of themselves. So God or Lord is that one, Devata is that one who is an intelligent principle who performs a certain function for a certain unit, in this case the body. For the sun, we have Surya Devata, who controls the sun movement. Surya Devata. It is also an intelligent lord of itself. So what is a Devata? Intelligent principle governing the law of. The law of what? Electricity. We have electricity Devata. We have air Devata. We have gravity Devata. Gravity is also intelligent, because remember, what is Ishvara? All knowledge. Everything around us is intelligence. We just look at it as this like inert, inert plants, inert skin. Everything is intelligent here in this universe. So therefore, this intelligence is in itself a Devata which performs a certain function for the whole. So in other words, every law in this universe is presided over by an intelligent principle called Devata. Now, what happens when you put all the Devatas together? What do you call that? Specific name? That is Ishvara. What is Devata? Intelligence. Where is intelligence? Subtle body. What is the macrocosmic subtle body called? Macrocosmic subtle body. Hiranyagarbha. In other words, when we put all of the Devatas together, For every single loka, for every single minute principle, we call that macrocosmic subtle body or Hiranyagarbha. And what is Hiranyagarbha? All knowledge. So when we talk about Ishvara being all knowledge, what are we actually talking about? Total knowledge, which is assigned in the form of devatas performing a certain function in the universe. Now, who is entitled for Shukla Marga? Answer, Brahma Vidaha Janaha. In other words, the Saguna Upasaka, so that one contemplates on Ishvara with attributes. So therefore, who goes to Brahmaloka to gain moksha there? The one who on earth has most of their time, most of their days contemplated on Ishvara with attributes. This includes in any religion, even Christianity, those who contemplate on Jesus all the time, 24/7, they also then are entitled to Brahmaloka. It's not just limited to the Vedas. So this means that performing rituals, charity, service does not entitle us for Brahmaloka. It only entitles us for Krishna Marga, the dark path, the dark, gloomy path. You're gonna say, what is Krishna Marga now? Some examples of Krishna Marga, because Krishna Marga is what? The one who goes to heaven. Because of what? All of the services they've done, all of the good works they've done, all of the charity they've donated. Can you give me an example of someone like this that you know? Do you know the Gates and Melinda Foundation? What are they doing? Saving thousands of lives, destroying, polio reduced, malaria reduced. In India, and malaria and Africa reduced. What is that? Service for what? The world. Is that Shukla or is that Marga? Is that Krishna? Krishna. So what is Bill Gates going to get after death? Heaven. What happens in heaven? You hang around there, you have a really good time, and then what happens? You come back to Earth and you have to make another Microsoft. Okay? Yeah. So I'm just trying to show you this, that no matter how good you are, you can be a Nelson Mandela who also tried to, destroy the barriers between whites and blacks. You can be a Martin Luther King who wants to destroy the black and white division. You can be the best person in the world. The best you will get is heaven. And then have to come back and pursue Ishvara all over again. Again, be limited by time and space. Therefore, you can start to see whether should I be a goody-goody in this world or should I just pursue the highest purpose, and that is meditate on God with features. Now, what about a jnani? Is a jnani, a wise person, an enlightened person, are they going to go to Krama Mukti? Why not?
Jnani goes straight to Brahmaloka.
No. No, no. No, only what is a jiva muktaha? What is a liberated person? One who has gained self-knowledge, removed ignorance, where? While living on earth. So what happens to a jnani when they die physically? Do they go to Brahmaloka? Why not? They don't go to Brahmaloka because Brahmaloka is just another stopover to gain moksha, but they already gained moksha while living.
So they become one with...
Yeah. Now they don't become one. They were already one at the time of removing ignorance while living. So from the aspect of looking at a wise person, an enlightened person dying physically, we say now they are achieved videha mukti. Now they're enlightened after death. But they have already what? Destroyed ignorance while living. So from their point of view, they haven't died. But from our point of view, they have died. So that's the difference. So therefore, a jivan muktaha does not go to Brahmaloka nor heaven because they're just samsara stopovers to get the job done and they come back to earth or to, get krama mukti in Brahmaloka. So conclusion for Shukla Marga, it's not for karmis. Karmi means those who are doers, those who are goodies, those who are doing actions, and it's not for jnanis. It is only for Saguna Ishvara Upasaka. The one, what is Upasaka? The one who meditates, reflects on Ishvara with form, with attributes. Departing by that bright path, which is presided over by the deities of fire, light, day, the bright fortnight and the 6 months of the sun's northern course, those people who meditate on Saguna Brahman attain Brahman.
Attain the Brahmaloka.
Yeah. By the means of Brahmaloka.
Oh, true. Okay.
Yeah, so they go to they have a stopover. Right, Jivan Mukti is direct path. But this one, the Shukla Marga, they have a stopover. Like the train stops at Brahmaloka, they gain the self-knowledge there, and then that results as I am one with all. Aham Brahmanasmi. So you can either do it on earth, or you can, devote yourself 24/7 to God here, and then go to Brahmaloka and get it there. There's no guarantee for Brahmaloka because, as the scriptures clearly say, you have to be doing 24/7 upasana. Like your whole life is just God, which is very hard today, by the way, because we've got job, we've got people around us. So this path was more appropriate at those times when, sannyasi could meditate.
That's why I was thinking, if 24/7, you are seeing God in everything around you, then you are doing that. Why do you need to just focus on the form and divine? Okay, even though in your mind you know Krishna is there, Rama is there, and everything else is there. But for 24/7, you have to do your duty in the present state you are in, around the people that you're with and the objects that you're with, animals or whatever, plants.
Yeah, but you're already ahead. You're already in the nirguna.
Yeah.
You're speaking from the point of view of knowledge. We're speaking from the point of view of someone who doesn't have that knowledge. So they need to think about it 24/7. You don't, Rani. So for you, you're okay.
I didn't come to that.
So your question is on the basis of you already being okay and you already see the truth. But we're talking about someone who cannot see the truth. They need to consciously go, where is God in this person? Okay.
I'm trying to attend the understanding for myself.
Okay, verse 25. Dhumora tristatha Krishnaha Shanmasa Dakshinayanam Tatra Chandramasam Jyotihi Yogi Prapya Nivartate. Krishna is speaking about those who go on. The only other choice is Krishna Marga, the dark path. Who are they? Yogi there, second line. Refers to a different kind of yogi. What kind of yogi? A physically oriented ritual yogi. That means they're not practicing mental upasana, because what is Shukla Marga? The one who practices meditation on God, how? Through the mind. These ones do not use their minds. They merely light up fires, yajnas, have certain offerings. Okay, they're all physical oriented. Karma yogis. Yeah. They're very, they do their duties well. They do their puja, they do their service, they help the world, they make a huge difference, they save the oceans, they save the forests, they save people's lives. All of these qualify for the yogi who will go to where? Krishna Marga. That means Swargaloka, heaven. So in other words, they have also attained punya, however, it is lower quality than Shukla Marga. Why is it lower quality? The answer is because performing mental upasana is much harder than physical rituals. Think about it this way. Yeah. To do something physical, it's very easy. My mind can be anywhere. I just have to listen to you. I just have to do, okay, put this flower there, go around, clockwise, and then offer this, offer that, go there, bring some water, put it there. That's all I have to do. My mind can be in a different country. Whereas for a mental upasaka, that is Shukla Marga, the mind has to be very disciplined, very focused. Therefore, Shukla Marga is a lot higher punya. They reach Swargaloka. Another name for Swarga is Chandraloka. So they go to Swargaloka. When we say heaven, we're talking about what? Anywhere between earth and Brahmaloka. So there's 6 heavens you can go to according to the merits, quantities of your punya palam. Now, which 4 devatas will escort the jivatma to these to Swarga, to Krishna Marga, that is? And the answer is Dhumaha, the devata of smoke. Yeah, the devata of Ratrihi, night. The devata of Krishnaha, that means the dark lunar fortnight, and Dakshinayana, the sun's southern phase, between 15th of July and 15th of January. Why do we call going to heaven gloomy? I mean, isn't heaven supposed to be a happy place? It is, right? But then why is it the dark? Why is it the gloomy path? Because in the long picture, you know when you're happy how quickly the time goes. So therefore, I will enjoy myself, but so quickly I'll be back on earth. And you know what's going to happen then? The Jivatma is going to be even more miserable. Why? Because heaven was so easy, so subtle, so fine. And now when the person comes back to earth, they're like, what's this, hunger? What's this mosquito bites? What's this headache? Everything's heavy and dense. So therefore, you can see the disadvantage of going to heaven. Okay, now Krishna is going to summarize in the next verse these two paths, and then we'll take a break and finish this. Departing by that dark path, which is presided over by the deities of smoke, night, the dark fortnight, and the 6 months of the sun's southern course, the yogi attains the lunar light of the heavens and then returns. Shukla Krishne gati hyete jagatak shaswate mate ekaya yatyana vrittim ananya vartate punaha. Okay, question. When were these two paths, Shukla and Krishna, created? When were they actually composed, constructed, put together? The answer is at the time of creation. Because at the time of creation, everything comes instantly. So in other words, they are not an afterthought of Bhagavan. Bhagavan will go, these people are acting kind of like children. I need to give them a new path. So in other words, at the time of creation, what came? Vedas. So Vedas just means eternal knowledge. And so at the time of creation, since all knowledge came, so did the Vedas. In other words, so did those who pursue either the path of service and those who are predisposed to pursuing the path of infinite Ishvara. Goal 1, Ishvara. Goal 2, finite pleasures. So therefore, they came at the time of creation. Why? In order to accommodate the two types of general categories of people who pursue goal 1 and goal 2. Now, there's a controversy that we have to clarify. This is going to especially happen in India, and those who read specifically chapter 8. And the controversy goes like this. The time of death will determine where you go. For example, the two paths, we'll first break them down. The first one is Uttarayanam. In other words, the bright 6 months, between 15th of January to 15th of July. Uttarayanam is also compared to daytime. The second path, Krishna Marga, is what? Dark 6 months between 15th of July to 15th of January. And it is also compared to nighttime. So in other words, if I die during the day, it is much better than if I die during the night. Or if I die between 15th of January to 15th of July, in other words, it's better to postpone your death to die between them. Right? So do whatever you can. Do the protein powder and shakes, exercise to die in the good months. Okay. So this is untrue, because if this was the fact, then, we had many saints who die in the dark 6 months. So this means a saint will now go, unfortunately, to Swarga Loka, and a criminal who dies during the day will go to Brahma Loka. So this is not going to work. So Brahma Sutra takes controversial statements like this, and it specifically addressed verse 24 and 25 to address this controversy, and the conclusion was, it does not matter whether you die during the day or during the night or what time of the year. All that matters is what quality of life we had. So this means you're now okay to die anytime you want, okay? You're not going to suddenly get, privilege because I died during the daytime underneath the sun versus the night. It's an important statement because even this can be stressful at the time of death. And we're thinking about what? World. Yeah. These two paths of the world, known as the bright path, Shukla, and the dark, Krishna, are indeed considered to be eternal. By the former one attains the world of non-return, but the latter one comes back again. In other words, the path of the dark is also eternal because there's constant heaven coming back. And the bright one is also eternal because it is a path of non-return, thus eternity. Naite srti sparta janan yogi muhyati kaschana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhavarjuna. Having understood the significance of the two paths, which are they? Upasana, path 1, which leads to Brahmaloka, which leads to Krama Mukti, which leads to eternity. And the second path being the path of karma, the path of duty, the path of service, which leads to Swarga. So having understood the significance and the distinction between these two paths, what does a yogi do? Yogi, as a result, has no doubt which one is superior. That means you first have to know which is which before we can determine which is superior. Now the whole second line, without reading it, is going to say, therefore Arjuna, those who choose the second, or those who choose Saguna Ishwara Upasana, that means meditating on Ishwara with features, those ones who also perform their duties every day, that means not only meditating on God with features, but also not forgetting about their mom, dad, sister, uncle, business, work, all right, spouses. They're doing both simultaneously. Those ones are superior. And also now we have to put a caution, because Krishna is saying that Upasana is superior to karma. In chapter 8 context, we're saying what? Meditating on Ishwara with features is superior path to doing duty, doing service for the world. But what happens when chapter 9 comes along? Chapter 9 is going to say, Nirguna Ishwara Jnanam, self-knowledge of the formless Ishwara, is superior to Saguna Ishwara Upasana. So what does this mean? This is a great example to demonstrate what happens and the danger of reading just one chapter and then going out of class and going, yeah, I've been to the Gita, I'm now going to do, meditate on Ishwara with features, that's all I need to know. You see what happens? The moment the new chapter comes, it negates the previous chapter because all we need to do is to keep moving on. So this is the problem with premature exits. So therefore the person needs to stay to get the whole big picture. Otherwise we get an incomplete vision. The last verse, Krishna is going to glorify Krama Mukti, accomplishing Ishwara, put accomplishing Ishwara in quotes, and it is as equal to as accomplishing Ishwara for a Jivan Muktihi. Except the Jivan Muktihi doesn't need to go anywhere, it's a direct path because they get liberated while living, they remove ignorance while living, whereas a Krama Mukti has not removed ignorance while living. Why? Because the mind wasn't qualified enough. Therefore, they remove ignorance where? Brahmaloka. But they both lead to the same path. O Arjuna, having known these two paths, no yogi gets deluded. Therefore, be committed to meditation at all times. Be committed to Upasana at all times. Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punya palam pradishtam atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. the yogi, knowing the significance of following this Saguna Ishvara Upasana, Param Sthanam Upaiti. As a result, they vote for Krama Mukti. As a result, they attain the supreme beginningless abode. Remember what abode means? Consciousness. In other words, the highest reality. So in other words, the benefit of Upasana, what is Upasana? Meditating on Ishvara with features. The benefit of that is greater than infinite benefits of karma put together. This means you can help millions and millions and millions of people. You can save lives for lifetimes, endless lifetimes. All of those benefits of dharma, artha, and kama put together do not equal the benefit of Upasana. Why? Because what is Upasana? It leads to infinite. And what is karma? What is doing good service? What does that lead to? Finite. In other words, how many finites make up infinity? So in other words, there's no comparison. So therefore, one Upasana is better than infinite finites, because the Upasana leads to infinity. At what kind of actions is Upasana better? And it's going to say now, Vedeshu, Upasana is better than the action of studying the Vedas, reading the Bible, reading some holy scripture. Upasana is better than Yajneshu, that means performance of rituals. Upasana is better than Tapaha Su, in other words, the practice of austerities or vows or mandates. And finally, Daneshu, charity. In other words, you can donate $80 billion, still it does not equal the benefit of Upasana. Why? Because all of these lists that we have mentioned are all finite. They give us Swargaloka, we come back. Again, we have to pursue the truth. Now the conclusion. Therefore, Arjuna, remember to meditate on Ishvara with features at all times and also at the time of death, and you shall attain me, the infinite. Having known and practiced this, the yogi goes beyond all that punya palam, which is promised with regard to the study of the Vedas, the performance of yajnas, the practice of austerities, and also the distribution of charity. He or she attains the supreme and primal abode. Om Tat Sat iti Shrimad Bhagavadgita tsu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Akshara Brahma Yogo Nama Ashtamo Dhyayaha. Brahman is the only reality. Thus ends the 8th chapter called Imperishable Brahman, having the topic of imperishable Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is in the form of a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, which is the essence of all the Upanishads, whose subject matter is both knowledge of Brahman and the actual attainment of that knowledge, the practice of that knowledge. Thus concludes chapter 8, and next week we will summarize chapter 8 and we will also begin chapter 9. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.